Hello, my name is Jan Mold. I'm one of the Assistant Directors for Competitive Events for Hosts of Future Health Professionals. And today I'm going to be talking to you about a syndrome that I was not familiar with until a few days ago, but it's been very interesting researching imposter syndrome. Tell you a little bit about what imposter syndrome is. It's feelings of inadequacy despite evidence of success, a chronic self-doubt, feelings of intellectual fraudulence despite proof of competency. I'll give you an example of when I was in nursing school. One of the students that I was in clinicals with was walking down the hallway. Now, she had on all white like we all did. I'll date myself, she even had her nursing cap on. The only difference is we had badges on our shoulders that said we were student nurses, but we wore our caps and we just had stripes on the side, not all the way across, but not anything that probably a patient's family would recognize. Patient's family came out of the room saying, I need a nurse, I need a nurse. And the student said, I'll find you one. Now, I know that we were all dressed up, we looked like nurses, but there was that feeling of we sure didn't have the skills that we needed to be prepared to take care of a patient. This has been studied a lot, particularly in medical schools. It is more common in females. It is more common in all other races other than Asians and whites. And there's some research that's been done with medical students regarding imposter syndrome. There's also concern that it may keep people from applying to med school because they don't feel like they could meet the requirements of a medical school education. So let's talk a little bit about what it does to your work performance. Most people that suffer from imposter syndrome fear an inability to manage or deliver what's expected of them. So they basically hold themselves back. They're afraid they'll do something wrong, and that in itself is going to impact their overall performance. They have a really hard time assuming responsibility. They avoid additional duties. They also worry that if they take on additional duties, would that impact the overall quality of their work? If they have success, then they're going to decide that success is due to outside factors. If they're unsuccessful, then they blame themselves. So if I'm a success, it's because of something outside of my doing. The people I work with, it was luck, it was just a random occurrence. But if I don't do well, then of course it's my fault. These folks are going to experience burnout. And that burnout's going to come from that continual attempt to overcome that sense of inadequacy. Even if they're not satisfied in their job, they're going to be fearful of any change. So how do you overcome it? Well, part of it is being aware of the syndrome and then talking about it, deciding that perfection is not possible for any of us, and then challenging those negative thoughts that will run in your head.
If I don't want to make a video like this of myself, I can just make a really cute.
Have you ever had that I'm in over my head and they're going to find out feeling? Yeah. Maybe it was when you got a promotion, or you started a business, or you landed in a new role. Like the highly qualified administrator who couldn't believe they gave her the job. once she got there, she found out the hiring committee had come directly from a wine function. She said, aha, they were drunk. Or maybe you've said, if I can do it, how hard can it be? I actually heard a guy say, if I can get a PhD in astrophysics from Caltech, anybody can. This tendency to discount or diminish obvious evidence of our abilities is called the imposter syndrome. The first time I heard the term, I was a 21-year-old doctoral student at the same university where my mom was working as a night janitor. I instantly identified, and so did the other students. As a matter of fact, we decided to start a little imposter support group. We started meeting and talking about being intellectual frauds and how we're fooling all of our professors. And everything went great for about 3 weeks. And that's about the time I started to have this nagging sense that even though everyone else was saying they were an imposter, it's like I knew I was the only real imposter. Decades later, and psychologists are still telling us that the way to overcome imposter syndrome is to just keep talking about it. The more we can talk about our supposed ineptness, the better we'll feel. I don't know, has anybody ever talked about how fat you feel? It's like, do you feel any thinner? Talking about imposter feelings is a start, but you can't share your way out of imposter syndrome. So what does work? Well, it begins by recognizing that people who really don't feel like imposters are no more intelligent or capable than you or I. That the only difference between them and us is they think different thoughts. That's it. Which is really good news because it means all we have to do is learn to think like a non-imposter. For example, the big difference between people who feel like imposters and people who don't is no one likes to fail. No one likes to make a mistake. No one likes to not know the answer or to have an off day or to struggle to master something. But when these things happen to imposters, we experience shame. Like the woman who was the head of a large medical center who said to me, I feel like an imposter because, quote, everyone else on the executive team is brilliantly articulate and I'm not. Now, there was a time when I would have said to her, oh, I'm sure you're brilliantly articulate. But now I know that wouldn't have served her. So instead I said, well, maybe you're not. Maybe you're not. And that's okay. She was thinking like an imposter. Non-imposters know they can't be brilliant at everything, and they're fine with that. The reason we have to pay attention to the conversation going on in our head is so we can reframe it the way a non-imposter would. My favorite reframe of all time came from Daniel Boone, the wilderness explorer, who said, I was never lost, but I was bewildered once for 3 days. That is a very good reframe. Somebody in serious need of a reframe was a friend of mine who was asked to put together a major presentation at the last minute. She nailed it. But all she could think of was, oh man, that was just a bunch of BS I threw together at the last minute. What's the reframe? How about, wow, how good am I that I can pull together information at the 11th hour that other people genuinely find useful? That last part is really important because it speaks to a contradiction in imposter logic. Because when you think about it, what we're really saying is other people are so stupid, they don't realize we're incompetent. So imagine if you had come up to my friend and said, that was great. And she looked at you and said, seriously? Wow. I mean, do you get out of the house much or what? Right? How arrogant and how absurd would that sound? What should she say in that situation? Yeah, thank you. Exactly. The thing about imposter syndrome is that it affects up to 70% of people. Not just high achievers, but it's a confidence issue for a lot of people. So for years, I would give people 10 ways to combat imposter syndrome. And then there was always that one person who would say, but is there anything else we can do? And I would say, well, of the 10 things I just gave you, what have you tried? Right? Well, nothing, but is there anything else we can do? It took me a while, but I finally figured out what was happening. What they wanted was to walk in the room feeling like an imposter and walk out of the room not feeling like an imposter. And that's not how it works. In fact, feelings are the last to change. Do you want to stop feeling like an imposter? Then you have to stop thinking like an imposter. How would you like to feel confident 24/7? Yeah, good luck with that. Because that's not how confidence works. Your body doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. So as you're walking up to the podium or into the meeting or any place where your confidence is shaky, you have to say to yourself, I'm excited. Okay? I'm excited. Okay? You don't believe it, and that's okay. Because now you know that you don't have to feel confident to act confident. And over time, you really will begin to believe the new thoughts. And when you do, you can stop trying to overcome imposter syndrome and instead just use reframing to talk yourself down faster. That way, instead of having an imposter life, you can have an imposter moment. Thank you.
So we're going to have Valerie stay up for a couple minutes while I ask her just a few questions while we set up for our next speaker. So 70%, that's a lot. Are there measurable consequences for a business or a company when people have imposter syndrome within the company?
Yeah, absolutely. When you feel like an imposter, you have to find ways to deal with the anxiety of kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. So some of the coping mechanisms are things like flying under the radar. You know, not raising your hand, not asking for promotions, not giving your ideas and sharing in meetings. Procrastination. You know, when I was supposed to be writing my dissertation, I had the cleanest house in Northampton, Massachusetts. Workaholism, self-sabotage. So all of those things, they work. They do the job, but at a cost. And if you have a number of people in the organization engaging in those behaviors, you're going to have a cost to the organization as well.
Totally. And for managers who might see that their employees are experiencing imposter syndrome, what are some ways they can help mitigate, and how can they help?
Yeah, one of the best things a manager or leader can do is to normalize it and to talk about it. And if you have imposter feelings, to talk about it in a very offhanded, matter-of-fact way, like, oh, that's an imposter thing. Oh, yeah, some of the brightest people on the planet have these feelings. I mean, Maya Angelou said, I've written 11 books, and every time I write another one, I think, uh-oh, I pulled another one over on everyone, and they're going to find out. So know that you're in excellent company with some of the most talented people on the planet.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Valerie.
Sure.
Thank you.
So, as was said by Dr. Young, and also Alexander Owens, just like the speaker we just heard, estimates that 70% of all people will experience at least one incident of imposter syndrome in their lifetime. What we want to encourage you to do is not let imposter syndrome steal your ability to unlock your potential. Thank you for your time.